Hello and welcome to the Talk and Tell podcast. I'm your host Teddy, and today I'm being joined once again by
Hayden.
And today we're going to be talking about the TMNT 2003 Season 1 Episode 16, The King. So, what do you think about this episode briefly?
Well, this episode, Teddy, I really didn't know what I was watching today. To be honest, I really thought I was watching something completely different to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, it was so surreal, so different and wacky and wild. It wasn't a turtle episode. It was just like I was watching like something from Thundercats or something ridiculous like that. It was so surreal and crazy. Even still, I'm still trying to process what actually happened in this episode.
I think overall this episode for me, I think that this episode was really great, and I think that paying tribute to Kirby or Jack Kirby was just amazing. And I think that this episode was really good for a few reasons, but I do think that going from being like a very grounded and somewhat realistic show to then all of a sudden going with aliens and other dimensions all within a matter of seconds, and then going back to like normality in the next episode, it just feels a bit weird that this episode is just that one out, like just like one out of the blue type episodes. But it's really great, and I do think there was definitely elements and scenes in here that I feel as though they could have extended to be like a two-parter. So yeah. Okay, so first start the episode off with all the turtles talking about what they should do next, and Mikey and Donnie eating and stuff like that. What do you think about that scene?
I didn't really have too much to say about this scene, although it's pretty funny when the turtles had to hide from the delivery man. And I know they're ninjas, but I got to tip my hat off to them because they're pretty good. And I thought Michelangelo was gonna get caught when the guy saw him. I was like, oh dear, it's all gonna go off now. Like the guy's gonna scream, everyone's gonna hear, the show's gonna be over. But no, luckily enough, Mikey's ninja skills kicked in and somehow, in a blink of an eye, managed to avoid getting caught, which was pretty cool to see. Um, but yeah, I didn't really have much to say to that scene where they're just chilling out. Of course, I feel sorry for April because she had to get the Chinese for them. I'm like, you wouldn't do that to a guest, would you? You wouldn't order a Chinese in a guest's house without saying, "Oh, would you like something?" Instead of just like buying it, would you? Now it's not proper.
Yeah. um. Yeah, I think this scene, it feels like we're going back to April's apartment just because I haven't been there in ages. I think the last time I went to this episode, or like to April's apartment, was episode. God, I want to say it's episode 5. So, it's been quite a while, and it also feels a bit weird having April back in the show again as well. It's not bad, but it just feels a little bit weird just because we haven't seen him quite a while. Raph and Leo arguing, I thought that was honestly quite good. Just because I always feel as though that with like this version of Leo and Raph arguing, I always find that one like really interesting just because they're both correct in their own ways, and I think that whatever side you go with, you know they chose the best option, but at the same time, you're sort of like second guessing your answer as well. And I do like the argument which I was having, which I thought was really cool. Then April. Also, did you notice that April was watching the same movie that Mikey was in part 1 of Notes from the Underground? I just thought that was like a little cool little detail there.
Oh yeah.
So with the takeaway scene, I thought that the person who was voicing the takeaway man was the same person who did Donter's voice, and I just don't think he fits doing other voices that are not him. So yeah, oh god.
I did not notice that.
What do you think about Mikey and Donnie's or like Mikey's little magic trick with him like saying that he can see me now he can't? What do you think about that very minor little scene? Because I enjoyed it quite a bit.
To be honest, I didn't really take much note of it. To be honest with you, it was a small little scene. It's like he's been trying to be Houdini, like Donnie's Houdini reference. It's like, okay, Houdini, cut it out. Like that was all right. But to be honest, I didn't really have much to say about that particular scene. Like the first couple of scenes, I don't really have too much to say about because it was just a basic introductory scene, but later on I do have a lot more to say. So I do warn, do brace yourself. All right.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so yeah, okay, so going into somewhat of a minor scene, but lean onto like a big part, is Raph singing in the shower, and then telling Don to go off and fix the water. What do you think about that scene?
Basically, I was pretty shocked to see Ralph without his bandana on. It was pretty weird and surreal to see him without his bandana, because we always see the Ninja Turtles with their bandanas on, but to see him without, they kind of looked like plain. It's hard to describe. They kind of looked like, well, what can I say? Bare turtles. Like they don't. I'm not too sure to describe it. They look naked without it. They like the turtles and their bandana is like such a huge focus point, and it just defines each turtle. But without them, it just looks like a bare, barren turtle that can walk and talk. It just doesn't give any sense to me whatsoever. But I digress. That's the only thing I'm gonna rant on about. They're like the weirdness of them having no bandanas on because it just makes them look plain. But yeah, with Donnie going down to the basement, I enjoyed that scene quite a lot because I thought, oh my gosh, it's one of the monsters from the underground. They've come back to take their revenge, and I'm thinking we've never seen this one before. But surprisingly enough, it disappears. I'm thinking, where did it go? Like, how did it get there in the first place? How would it know where the turtles are hiding? But I thought it was like digging up from the underground itself. Like they dug up through a hole in the floor and they found them that way. But nah, my imagination deceived me. But it was pretty cool to see how the monsters looked and the creation behind it. It looked really interesting, and I really did enjoy those watching those models.
Yeah, I'd say that the wrestling part, I think, I don't know, I've always loved the wrestling part. I just love his singing. It wasn't really much of a song, just going la dee or la da da, but I just think that it's just Raph and he just makes it work. And then one thing which I want to say here, which is somewhat negative about this episode, was when Mikey goes, "Cake? I love cake. Where's cake?" I thought that was an absolutely bad joke. Just because it reminded me a bit too much of the 2012 Mikey, and 2012 Mikey is okay, but he sometimes gets on my nerves with the way that he's presented. So yeah. So with the monster bit, I thought it was like really cool to see the monster down there. It was like really, I think like for you, it was like very surprising that just out of nowhere there was a monster, and I do think that it was like really cool. I don't think too much really to say about it. It's just that like a lot of, like weird things happen in this episode, but I feel so that this should honestly be like a really weird and fascinating bit we should talk about. But when comparing it to the other parts in this episode, it's just like, yeah, this is somewhat normal. So yeah. So then Donatello goes into the room and he finds Kirby. What do you think about Kirby?
Kirby was a really weird character for me. Like, he wasn't afraid of Donnie whatsoever. Like, he was afraid at first of thinking, oh, he's come back for the crystal, but in hindsight, he wasn't. But really, Kirby was such a strange character. Even though he was a human character, he just really puzzled me. Like, a normal human being was okay with a giant green ninja, teenage mutant ninja turtle just standing in their room. Like, he was completely alright with that. If that would have been me, I'd be like, one, what's going on here? Two, how did you get in here? And three, please don't hurt me.
Yeah, I think that Kirby. I've always really enjoyed his character. I do think that he's like very trustworthy. Like way too quick. He just. I mean, if I saw Donatello and all that and all the other monsters, I'd be very skeptical with what I see and what I think is real and stuff like that. But I think that I think it's just one the way that Kirby is presented is. I don't know, there's something about him that is just likable. But not to mention, I think that he's like also his voice. It just works somehow for making him just being like a really I don't know, like a really likable character. And I don't think there's anything else to really explain about it. It's just that he's just a likable character for no reason whatsoever. So then going to the next scene, we do have Donatello drawing a stickman, which the stickman comes alive and starts to attack Donnie. What do you think about that scene?
I thought that was a pretty crazy scene to watch. Like, Donnie draws his stick man of sorts, and it comes to life. Like, it literally just jumps off the paper, literally, and just starts going around trashing the place. And I'm thinking, is anyone gonna stop that thing? Is it gonna like turn out to be like some sort of monster? But no, it just kicks Donnie a lot, and I'm not gonna be surprised if Donnie was to actually destroy that thing with his stick. Like, I mean, like I would have probably done the same. I was like, you little devil, and I just probably would have hit it and just like you, like I'm your creator. I can take you out of this world. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that scene is an interesting one because I think that if the amount of stuff that Donnie invents and stuff like that is weird that he can only draw a stick person. It feels though that he could draw a lot more because of all his inventions and stuff like that. But I think that with it's an interesting scene, but I think that the way that I would have handled that if I was in Donatello's situation was just like absolutely just kick it like across the wall. So yeah. Okay, so then in the next scene, I know this one's gonna annoy you quite a bit when I do point sign count. Donnie and Kirby do travel to the next world, and before we do talk about the other world, I agree I want to annoy you and lose your insanity. But how does Donnie look back through the portal when, even though we see the portals up in the sky, how can he just walk back? So, yeah, that's all I've got to say about that. Care to comment on that?
To be honest, at this point, Teddy, I have just given up on questioning what happens in this universe. Like, we've got we've got too much going on, and my brain's just like, yep, this is normal now. Like, this is just normal. I'm not even comprehending now. So I've just shrugged it off and like, yeah, that's a thing now. So I'm not even questioning it, because if I do, I'm gonna draw myself to near insanity, and I'd like to keep my sanity tonight.
So yeah, okay, so now that we're in a new world, don't you quickly, like, briefly, like explain, like, what you think about the world, because it feels though there's got a bit that happens in that world. So yeah, what do you think about that little bit there?
To be honest, I really didn't think, like, for a split second, I forgot that I was actually watching a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle episode for a second. Like, I thought I was watching something from, like, Thundercats or some other old TV show. The Transformers, the old one. If you know, you know, but the old Transformers series, TV series, like it was the full 2D animation where it was hand drawn, like that really old one. But yeah, to be honest, I was just blown away on how much creativity, like so many colors, like it was a proper cheesy like 90s comic show or comic book type of situation going on there, and it actually worked, and I liked it. And it was a bit crazy to comprehend like what was up, what was down, what was left, right, and center. Like it took you a second to understand what was going on, but then of course when Kirby explained the situation and he drew it, and I gotta say, hats off to Kirby, because he's one hell of an artist, I must say. Like, he was able to draw all of this, and of course it come to life. Sure, it was a help of the crystal, but his drawing skills are pretty spot on.
Okay, so that little bit there, this good. Let's also lose your sanity a bit more. If all his drawings come to life, how did that world come to life? Because you see in one page that he drew that world on one page. Um, oh god, yikes. But yeah, with the world, I think that it's very like visually creative. I think that it's all very bright, unique, creative. Absolutely love it, and I do think that because you mentioned about the comic book stuff, there was like a lot of like if you know his work, then you can definitely point out like a lot of inspiration for like the characters and even the world itself, because even with the like the black bits in the sky where like it was like bubble or like circles and stuff like that. That was actually his effects which he used in the comics, and it's like one of the things which he's like well known for the comic books. And I thought like I do think like using putting that into the comics was like, or the TV show was like, oh my god, that's like a really cool throwback to him. And I think that like I know, it's one of those things which I wish that this episode was like a few parts long, just so that we could explore it so much. Um, and yeah, so then go into the first part of the episode where we do get to see the Guardians of the City fighting off the monsters and Donnie coming in and helping. What do you think about that scene?
That was one of my favourite scenes within this episode, because those four characters defending the bridge, they reminded me of so much of He-Man and Thundercats.
Oh,
Have you ever seen He-Man or Thundercats, Teddy?
yeah, I have seen them, but I would say that they remind a bit more like the Avengers, just because you got one with the shield, you got one with the hammer, and then you got one, then you got the main one which talks, which has sort of like Iron Man type like vibes. That's sort of like what I was getting at from those characters. And I mean, even the Green Monster, a bit of like the Hulk. So, but like, I can understand like He-Man and all that.
Like, the nostalgia was there.
Yeah. But what do you think about that first fight bit though?
I really did enjoy that fight. Just seeing the monsters and the four unknown characters. I don't know if their names are said in this episode, but seeing them go head on, defeating one another left, right, and center, that was pretty cool to see. And seeing a different side to how heroes can fail, but can rise up again, which is pretty cool, which we don't really see much of these days. They just win, no failures at all, but they just win. But seeing this, where they fail and then of course they rise up again to win, was actually quite nice to see.
Yeah, I think that this fight scene overall, I did like really enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, like I mentioned with these four guarding characters, they will give me like a lot of like adventure type vibes and like a lot of heroes, and I feel like that worked really well for like everything that Kirby did for the comic book industry. And I would say that even with like Donnie fighting, it's just so great to see like a lot of focus on Donatello, just because we've already had a Raph focus episode, Mikey focus episode, and Liu has had quite a bit of spotlight on him. So I think like now finally getting some attention on Donnie was just really great, and it worked so well. And I would definitely have to see a lot more Donnie fighting, like because it feels to with him especially, he's like very limited to what he can do with his fighting, just because he has a stick. There's not exactly too much to see him do. So to see him doing it all here was just creatively good in a way. So yeah, and then we do have a little bit in between this fight and the next fight, and we do get to see the city and stuff like that. And there's not really too much I can really say here. I mean, I do enjoy this little bit here where we're just taking a break between the two fights. But I do think that if this was supposed to be like a longer episode or maybe like a movie type thing, this would have been like the type of scene where the character, where like, Don and Kirby will explore the city. They would then they were prepared a bit for the war. I suppose though that if this was longer, they could have like really explored a lot of stuff in this world, which I think I was just missing from this episode. Just because it feels though that with this episode, from like with the bit I'm talking about, it just feels though that we just went from, you know, just normal grounded, realistic stuff to us hanging out in April's house to then all of a sudden going to a different world and stuff like that. And I know that the Turtles do go to do all this weird, wacky stuff, time travel, space, and stuff like that in the following season, stuff like that. But it just feels though that it went from like 1 to 100 really quick. And this bit here just feels though maybe they could have had like a little break to or a little breather for this bit. But what do you think about that little bit in between the two fights?
Yeah, I do 100% agree with you on that one. If this episode was longer, they would have explored the city, explored the people, prepared themselves for the battle to come. Like previous episode that we've just reviewed, where they walk around the abandoned city, they explore, they get to know their surroundings a lot more. That would have been awesome to see. because we would have seen all these different people, all these different cities, the new technologies, the new weapons that they could have used to aid them in their battles. But yeah, sadly that wasn't the case. But I would have 100% watched that because I just love that little bit extra of going around exploring the new world and getting to know the characters within that new world. And it just makes it a bit better, in my opinion. But seeing that little scene where they take a break, saying, "Look, thank you, dear traveller, for helping us. We're forever in your debt." La da da da.
Another thing which I do want to bring up here is that I do think that while this episode is really great for 101 different other reasons, and like I've already previously mentioned with the whole stuff that it goes from like really grounded stuff to then going to weird and wacky places, and then the following episode they don't do anything as wacky or anything like that. I do feel as though that this story would have worked a lot better in the 2012 show, just because with that version of Turtles, we are introduced to the Krang, different dimensions, different worlds, mutants every week, and all that. But whereas this version of Turtles is very grounded, so it feels though it just like it does feel like a bit weird, like going from like very grounded stuff to then going to different worlds, different monsters and stuff like that all of a sudden, and then by next week it will go back to normal. Like, did you think that, or do you think it was like perfectly normal to go from like 1 to 100 really fast?
Um, yeah, I was a bit confused at first. Like, 1 minute you're fighting the foot soldiers, the next you're fighting monsters, and then the next you're in a complete different dimension with crazy monsters, people that look like the Avengers. Like, yeah, it was a bit fast for me to comprehend what was actually going on.
So yeah, then going to probably the biggest part about this episode, the final battle, where we do get to see, where we get to see all them final monsters. Donnie getting a gravity gun. There's a big robot, and they're winning. What do you think about that scene? I know there's quite a bit to really like unpack here, but I feel there's I don't really know how else to really talk about this big scene.
Well, I've just got to say straight off the bat, I really, for some reason, I really did enjoy the gravity equalizer and the whole weapon itself, because that just it reminded me of something like Cyborg's weapon, like from the old Teen Titans series. Do you remember that, Teddy?
Oh yeah.
Like Cyborg's arm turn into weapons of such. But yeah, and I gotta say, I really do love the sequence in which the we have a close up of the weapon firing, and you can actually see the bolts or lasers firing from the weapon and hitting the targets. I don't know why, but that particular scene where it just zooms in and Mikey is giving almighty hellfire upon the enemy and they're just floating up in the sky. I don't know what that scene was, but it just gave me so much of the Teen Titans Cyborg weapon system. And then, of course, I can't remember what other one, but it was so good. And that's another favourite part of the scene as well that I enjoyed in this episode. I don't know why, something particular about that weapon. I think whether it was the graphics or the audio that they used to like depict the sound of bolts or lasers or bullets firing from it, it was it was really well put together, and I don't really know how else to describe it. But that was just that one little scene just made it all for me, and that's what I really enjoyed about it.
Hmm. What do you think about the like other parts with like the big like machine and all the other like little bell bits in there?
The machine, I've got to say, Kirby can draw. Like he can draw real quick. Like if he can do that in like under what was that, 10 seconds at most, then he could have drawn like a whole thing. And I'm sorry to do this to you, Teddy, but if Teddy could draw all those weapons, couldn't he have built a wall or fortress around the bridge or city, or drawn some more troops to fight in the battle? That would have been awesome to see.
Yeah, I just think that like with this with the pen thing, I do have like loads of like questions about it. Like we'll be talking about in a minute in terms of like what Kirby could have done differently. But I do think that's like a big problem with the crystal. Like while it's like really great to have like Kirby be able to be like very creative with creating all the monsters, creating the help with the the big machine and stuff like that. I do think that they didn't really set any sort of like boundaries with this like crystals. We don't really know what it can do, what it can't do, and stuff like that. Because I will be explaining like certain bits where just like, well, Kirby could have done that and this, and this, and this, but I suppose though that there was like no boundaries to what it could and couldn't do. So it was like really great, but at the same time there's loads of little things about it that I'll probably explain right now. Um, with the first battle, I thought it was really creative, really fun and unique. Especially seeing like the adventure type characters going against the monsters, really great. And also not to mention the fact that we had more spotlight on Donnie and seeing how he fought. I thought it was like really creative and really fun and really unique. And then with the gravity gravity equalizer, um, I thought it was like really fun and really unique, especially for Donny having that type of gear. But again, then this is all like well, okay, you have loads of problems with the crystal bit, where saying that they had no boundaries for it, which some like holding it back, I would say. Just because like Kirby drew Donatello and then drew the blaster thing, and with that I gotta say is like when Donatello being drawn again, like there's so many questions I have about the whole crystal thing, and this is just like one example. I do have quite a few other ones, but I do think he was like really fun, creative, and just so Donatello in a way that he would use a machine to take out the gravity and potentially just left him up there to die. Um, and yeah, then with the big monster thing, it was great in so many ways. But like with Kirby controlling it through his mind, weird, and just the monsters get picked up and just placed in the mouth, but don't really do anything. So yeah, weird again, but somehow it just works. Somehow it was giving me. I don't know what the machine was giving me, but it gave me like vibes of like so many different types of thing. Um, just like one of them was like giving me Pikachu vibes just with the way that it looks and the colours, and Iron Man type vibes because of it's a machine and stuff like that. So it was like very uniquely creative with how it looked, and then again with the boundary things with Kirby's crystals. Uh, so when it was trying to stop the monsters, it was drawing on all these different like locks onto the monsters. And here's where I got some problems with the crystal again. One, couldn't he have just erased all the monsters and just rubbed them out? And two, if there were all so many, and he probably drew all of them individually, but I don't know why he drew them all individually, the same characters over and over again individually. But wouldn't that mean that he would have to do that for over like 1,000 of the characters instead of just drawing it like once on each version of the character? That's all I really got to say about that. It like you understand what like the boundary thing with the crystals, where there's no boundaries to what it can and can't do. I think that's like the biggest problem with the episode so far, is that there's no set boundaries. I've got, so yeah, what do you think about that boundary thing with the crystals?
Teddy, I'm not even gonna question it anymore. I thought of that as well, but then as I thought deeper and deeper, and as far as I went into the rabbit hole, I thought to myself, this is not worth it going all out trying to figure out how many monsters he would have had to drawn to rub them out to do something else like that. I just like Hayden to stop. You're gonna be here all night if you're gonna do that. So I just didn't think about it. But I just want to go back to the machine real quick. It was pretty interesting to know that you were thinking of Iron Man and that sort of stuff for the idea of it all. For some reason, I thought of the Garbage Man.
Yeah, that is somewhat interesting, just because the person who voiced Kirby did the voice of Garbage Man. So maybe a bit of referencing back there, I guess.
Ah, I see.
So yeah, then for the final scene, we do have Kirby and Donnie going back, and the portal's closing, and Kirby gets trapped in that world. What do you think about that scene?
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That was very bittersweet. That was. It was very bittersweet. Like him, like sacrificing himself to save Donatello and to stay in that world was. It was really. I don't know why. Even though it was for a brief amount of time that we got to see Kirby and that we actually got to experience his character, you made a strong connection with him. Like you liked him because he was a likable character. He was a friendly and enjoyable and lovable character. And then of course to be taken away just like that in a blink of an eye was a bit heartbreaking, if you understand where I'm coming from. Like he was relaxed around Donnie. He was the first human, well, sorry, I meant the third human to actually be alright with a giant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle around them. But it was just really sad just to see Kirby go in that sort of way. But I'm guessing he would have liked to stay a bit longer in that world because he was free to do whatever he chose. Like he was the ruler. He was a god of that world. Once he drawed it, it became reality. And in hindsight, it would have been. It was just really bittersweet to watch.
Yeah, I think that overall this scene, I think that it's really great, and it just felt a bit rushed. I'll say that, where it's just like, oh, they're walking home. Oh no, the portal's closing. We need to get back. Oh no, the portal's closing. Girl, can't get through. I do feel as though it was maybe a bit rushed, but at the same time, I think that, like you already mentioned, because it's Kirby and the way how he is, the way that he's presented, his voice and stuff like that, he it just makes him so likable, and it's somewhat sad, I'd say. But then we do go into the final scene where Donnie goes up to April's apartment and reads the piece of paper where it says, "Life at best is bittersweet." What do you think about that scene?
That was. I'm not gonna lie. That was a bit sad. That I found that a bit sad. Like his final words were, "Life is bittersweet," and of course, that just. I don't know why it hit me differently. Like his final words to Donnie, like Donnie as his friend, he got his last words from that piece of paper, and they were just brief and to the point. And life is bittersweet. Like it's too short, and I don't know why it just gave me a real deep felt meaning of like everything within the episode. I just don't know how to put it into words. It was just like Kirby said, bittersweet. Like it was fun while it lasted, but then of course nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those scenes where it's just because I've always had this feeling that after watching this episode, it's one of those ones that you think about it for a while and just it's one of those like vibe type scenes where it's just like, yeah, but you don't really know how to put it into words because it's true, but I don't know. I mean, I feel got like a good feeling that with this whole scene here, we're just gonna keep repeating like the same thing over and over again. We're saying that like love is best, bittersweet, and I don't think there's anything else we can really say about it.
Yeah.
Truly, life at best is bittersweet. God, this is really taking a really dark
God,
turn.
this is getting very deep. This
Oh
is
my god.
like a TED talk about life. It's just getting really deep.
Oh no. Okay. Then moving on. Shall I read some comments?
Let's hear him.
Okay, so yeah. So to lighten the mood, so on YouTube, it was quite interesting, and you hear this quite a lot with the actual comments themselves, talking about Jack Kirby. So looking what they put, Cap, Darkseid, Surfer, he is the GOAT. So I think he helped create those characters, which again, that's like really cool. That he helped create Captain America, Darkseid, Silver Surfer. I think he helped create like Galactus. He helped create some of the most iconic characters in modern society. For Kids Timothy, they put this episode is so great. It's based directly on the comic book which this episode is based on. I really like how it's so faithful. Focus was to the original Mirage comics, the Nickelodeon who only wants to be more faithful to the original TV show. Ronald Anderson, they put amazing. Any episode with Johnny is the best, and I'll say that's somewhat true, depending on what version. Andrew Wagner, they put it was a very odd tonal shift and strange one-off episodes in the series that had everything else in arcs and pretty thoroughly connected. The episode was never brought up again, which is disappointing. Most other episodes have some sort of callback or relation to the rest of the series, but this episode felt so disconnected. And yeah, that's like another thing which I want to mention. Kirby never appears ever again. The world never appears again. This was the first and last appearance of Kirby. So, yeah, life at best is bittersweet.
Mm.
Bayou Walker, they put a good Donatello focus episode, homage to the King, and a good adaptation of the actual Timothy comic from the original Mirage Studios comics. Spot 7, they put, this episode will always have a place in my heart. This comment is actually really, really sad. So this episode will always have a place in my heart. With Kirby used a pencil with crystal to make drawings come to life, I like to imagine having a pencil like that. Imagine using it to draw pictures of my late mother who passed away, and that drawing comes to life. I know it's not exactly the same, but it feels like a great way to keep her memory alive and happiness. Yikes. I don't want to say I'm really sorry to hear about all that.
Yeah.
Lowell Lucas Jr. They put that's funny. Oh god. Oh god. Lucas. Oh god. Lowell Lucas Jr. They put what's funny is I actually have the 80s original comic book storybook before they adapted this to animation for the 2003 series. Donnie being one of my favorites, cemented here in this series, and was also included in the original tale. I'm so glad they honoured Jack Kirby so well here, and yeah. So on Reddit, there was one person called the Smoker 82060. They put it was a great Jack Kirby one of the no. I'm reading that comment wrong. They put it was great. Jack Kirby was one of a kind comic artist. I know comics are held up like paintings are, but his art is up there with the best world-known painters. And yeah, so on Facebook there was a weird comment. Joseph Visual, I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. They just put season 1 episode 16. Yeah. Jodie Moneyhan, they put kind of disappointed they never revisited that story again. So yeah. So what do you think about that they never revisited this world again?
I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit sad to hear that we will never explore this story arc again, as this could have been a crazy story arc, and one I would thoroughly enjoy because it would allow me to create these crazy ideas that would possibly or possibly not become reality. So yeah, that's an interesting thought, but I'm very sad that we don't go and back to this reality. Like, I would like to see, I was hoping to see this in further episodes. Like, for instance, the Turtles need some help, and Kirby appears out of nowhere with his imagination army, like an army that he's created in his world, and he's become a ruler, a president, or a emperor of his world, and he's helped the turtles out by drawing this army for them, fighting against the Foot or whatever they're fighting against. That would have been pretty cool to see. And Kirby popping in and out of the episodes from time to time, aiding them in their travels and their adventures. That would have been something, and I would have definitely watched that because that would have been an interesting concept to go down.
Yeah, I think that with them never revisiting this stuff again, it's somewhat disappointing, I would say, because it just makes this episode feel very pointless in a way, just because they don't go back to it. But I also think that at the same time, there's like something a bit. I don't know if poetic's the right word to use here, but I think that because Jack Kirby did sadly pass away in real life before this episode came out, I do think that in like many ways is somewhat representing his life in a way. I do think that like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I do think you understand like the core concept of what I'm trying to really get at here.
Yeah,
Okay, so do you want to hear some trivia now?
let's hear it.
Okay, so with the trivia, is before this episode begins, it gives a dedication to Jack Kirby, one of the comic book artists for Mirage Comics. I'm not too sure if he was comic artist for Mirage. Mirage Comics was the one who created Turtles and stuff like that. There's a okay. So the next bit of trivia I will be talking about in a second because it's a really big one. Um, so this episode was based off the Mirage Comics Donatello issue number 1, which was a comic just dedicated to Donatello, and was basically this whole story. Kirby himself is an homage to legendary comic book artist Jack Kirby, also known as the King. When we get a glance at the TV, we see April's watching the same horror movie Mikey was watching in Notes from the Underground Part 1. When Toll's hired from the delivery man, he spots Mikey in the chair. When he looks again, it's replaced by a stuffed purple bear, and this is actually a sort of like reference to the TMNT movie where Mikey does the exact same thing. This episode, we get here Raph singing for the first time. One of the warriors yell, "You shall not pass," to the Black Horde, which is which basically a reference to Gandalf, saying the same thing. For a brief second, we get to see Mikey's eyes turn blue. April wears Yo's shirt in this episode, which is a reference to April's old clothes she wore in the 80s show. This episode is Donatello's first individual focus episode. Okay, now for the biggest thing in this episode was the fact that this episode actually has an alternate ending to this episode, and the version which we watched was actually the alternate ending.
Really?
So, yeah, it's really fascinating with this bit, and I don't really know how many people know about this all too much, just because the first original ending, which was aired during its time, no, okay, let me rephrase that. When the episode was first released on TV screens, and even on some DVDs, I mean, the one which even my DVD in the UK, it has the original ending. And the original ending is not too much different from the main ending. So the original ending, it was when he comes out of the portal, and that's when the paper or the portal turns into that piece of paper. And instead of Donatello walks upstairs, he just sits in the corner and looks at it, and it has the same message and all that. But the new ending, which was made specifically for this episode, and I think they spent like $1,000 to rework the ending, and it just worked really well, I would say. And the ending which you do get, where Donatello goes up the stairs and goes to the window, and the conversation with Rap, that was actually made to be a lot more comic book accurate. So yeah, that's a fun little, neat little detail, I guess. So yeah. Okay, so with the cast, so for the cast we have Donatello played by Sam Riegel, and we've got Kirby voiced by Mark Pollock, we've got April voiced by Veronica Taylor, we've got Leonardo voiced by Michael Sinterklaas, we've got Mikey played by Wayne Grayson, Raphael played by Frank Frenson, and Splinter done by Darren Dunstan. There were like the warrior people, and they were voiced we got one by Gregory Abbey, and also another person called J. David Brimmer, who did quite a few voices on Turtles as well. And also, as mentioned, the delivery man was also voiced by Donatello. So yeah, which actor do I was looking to this week? Because we've done the majority of them. I think the only person we haven't done is David Brimmer. Do you want to look into him?
Yeah, go on then. Let's look into David Brimmer.
Okay, so yeah, he did quite a few voices on Turtles. Depending what he's been in, would depend how much time we need for that with this section. Okay, so he's in Berserk. I think that's an anime type thing. What else has he been in? He's been in quite a lot. I'd say a lot more than all the other actors which we've looked in recently. What else? He's been in Yu-Gi-Oh! He's been in Pokemon. He was in before the Dark World game. Well, Yeah, I think it's just been like a lot of stuff that we haven't seen, but it's famous stuff. I would say. Uh,
What
yeah,
other
it's just,
stuff?
um,
Well, he's been in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that we know
it,
of. The Little Panda Fighter, I haven't seen that one. G.I. Joe, he's been in that, the
it's
TV
been,
series.
yeah, I was about to say that one.
Um, he's been in One
uh,
Piece. He's been in One Piece as Sir Crocodile.
oh, oh, this is another interesting thing. He actually did the voice of Doctor Malignus in the Uncovered Toad Tartan episode.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
He's been in Yu-Gi-Oh,
yeah, he also does.
One Piece as
Yeah,
well.
does the voice of a dance. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, he did the voice of some like some alien dinosaurs in another episode of Tales. He's done quite a bit, I would say, in terms of. But at the same time, I feel so that he's probably gonna be like another one. There's probably been a lot of stuff, but probably stuff we haven't seen or probably not that famous stuff. So that's
Yeah.
somewhat
Well, he's been in
disappointing.
Mobile Suit Gundam
Um,
as well.
I don't really know what that is.
I've briefly had an introduction to
God.
it, but it's about like Gundams, well, giant mechs basically, and they fight against monsters. And it's like, how can I explain this? It's like Pacific Rim. If you ever seen Pacific Rim,
Uh, don't. I've seen like clips from trailers, but yeah. So yeah. So with the next episode is going to be called Shredder Strikes Back Part One. What do you think is going to happen in that episode?
um, well, I'm just going off my like imagination here. I think Shredder's gonna return at some point in the episode.
Very good guess. Feel like you're cheating a bit.
I think he's gonna come back. The turtles are gonna have to fight him again, and that's gonna be the episode.
Well, I'll say you're halfway there, but I feel like you're cheating a bit because of all the
Really?
thing. So who do you think is going to be starting the episode off?
Oh, I am not too sure. I want to say I'm not too sure because last time I got it right, and I want to keep up my streak. So I want to say Donnie, but I know it's not going to be Donnie.
No, it's
No,
not.
no, I
It
knew it.
is Leonardo.
Oh, that was the first one I was going to pick.
He had one job. Well, yeah. Do you have anything else to say about this episode, or are you sort of done with this one?
To be honest, I've said what I've needed to say. I really enjoyed this episode. A crazy story arc and a crazy episode overall, but a really enjoyable one to watch. It was very bittersweet, and it's an all right episode, and I do recommend. But apart from that, I got nothing else to say unless you want to say something, Teddy.
No, I don't. I feel as though that I said everything if I wanted to, but I just feel as though that instead of doing the normal outro bit where we go over where you can find us and comments and all that, and do our normal intro or our outro, I do feel as though that the only proper ending that we can truly say about it is just quoting the actual episode itself with the quote itself. So yeah, bye everyone and all that. But yeah, life at best is bittersweet.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.